All right, so we're diving deep today into something I know a lot of you really want to get better at. Speaking English faster and just more confidently overall.
It's a really common goal.
And, you've all sent in some amazing tips and techniques, like
Yeah.
all sorts of different approaches to boosting fluency,
Right?
making your spoken English sound more natural, and, just getting rid of that hesitation so you feel more comfortable when you speak.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to try to, break these down,
Yeah.
really highlight the strategies that are going to give you like the most bang for your buck.
That's right. And one thing that really struck me looking at all the material you sent over is that strong emphasis on actually doing, not just knowing.
Right.
It's like it's less about memorizing grammar rules in isolation and much more about like really engaging with the language actively.
Yeah.
And the idea is that translates to smoother, more natural speech.
Okay, so let's jump right in. And
Yeah.
one of the biggest themes that just keeps coming up over and over again is, this foundational idea of regular practice.
Yeah, practice, practice, practice.
It keeps popping up everywhere.
It's essential.
It's like, you want to get better at speaking, you've got to practice consistently. There's just no way around it.
Exactly.
It's like learning guitar or, getting better at a sport.
Yep, you got to put in the time.
You just have to put in the time.
It's the only way.
And what's so interesting is that, there are so many different ways to practice.
Mm.
The sources really highlighted this whole range of self-practice techniques.
It's pretty amazing, actually.
It really shows that even when you don't have like a conversation partner,
Right.
there's so much you can do on your own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take, for instance, like speaking in front of a mirror.
Ah, yeah, the classic.
I know it sounds a little weird.
It feels a little strange at first.
At first, but it's actually like a really direct way to become more aware of your facial expressions.
You see what your listener might see.
Right. You're like, oh, wow, I do that.
Exactly.
And your pronunciation.
Yeah.
You can really start to notice
Mm-hmm.
how you're forming the sounds.
Yeah.
And I think that can help people feel more at ease when they're actually speaking with someone.
Yeah, you're more conscious of how you sound and look.
Exactly.
That just builds confidence.
Okay. And then there's recording yourself.
Ah, yes, the dreaded recording.
I know some people cringe at the thought.
Yeah, I used to be one of them.
But it's honestly
It's so helpful, though.
incredibly revealing.
Yeah.
You can pick up on like habits and clarity issues that you just don't notice when you're speaking.
You're so focused on what you're trying to say
Right.
that you don't realize how it actually comes across.
And it's also really motivating to be able to track your progress.
Oh, yeah.
Like you might not feel a big difference from one day to the next.
No.
But if you compare a recording from today to one from like a few months ago,
Wow. It's amazing.
it can be amazing.
The progress you can make.
And the thing is, it doesn't have to be these huge chunks of time.
Right.
The sources really emphasize the effectiveness of like those small daily efforts.
Consistency over intensity.
Yeah, even just 5 or 10 minutes a day, it adds up.
Absolutely.
Think about it, 10 minutes every day for a month. That's 5 hours of practice,
That's right. It all adds up.
which is not insignificant.
Not at all.
And to make those little practice sessions even more effective,
Yeah.
there's this idea of setting specific goals.
Ah, yes. Focus your practice.
Instead of just, I'm going to practice English now. You can be
Mhm.
like, okay, today I'm going to focus on this particular sound.
Yeah.
Or, I'm going to work on my fluency talking about this specific topic.
Mhm.
Or I'm going to try to like incorporate 3 new vocabulary words into my speaking.
It's about having a clear target.
Right.
So you're not just kind of aimlessly practicing.
Exactly. And that way, you're targeting very specific areas where you want to improve.
Yeah.
Okay, now one technique that came up a lot was shadowing native speakers.
Oh, yeah. Shadow. It's a classic.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about like why that's so effective?
Sure. So basically, shadowing involves mimicking the way native speakers talk.
So it's like you're copying their rhythm,
Right, the rhythm.
their tone, their pronunciation.
Exactly.
From movies or podcasts. It's almost like you're trying to match the music of the language.
I like that, the music of the language. That's a great way to put it.
And what's really beneficial about shadowing, I think, is that focus on matching the intonation
Yeah.
and the stress patterns.
The stress patterns are so important.
Because English rhythm is different from a lot of other languages.
It really is.
It's not just about getting the individual words right.
Yeah.
It's about capturing that rise and fall.
Right.
The emphasis on certain syllables that gives English its natural flow.
It's all about the flow.
So think of it like an actor rehearsing lines, but instead of focusing on the emotions they're trying to convey, you're focused on the music of those lines.
I love that analogy.
The rises and falls, the stressed syllables.
Yeah, and if you really want to get the hang of it, focus on just like a few seconds of audio at a time.
Okay.
And try to match the speaker's intonation as closely as you can.
So it's really like you're zeroing in.
You're zeroing in on those micro details.
And that builds muscle memory
It does.
for that natural English rhythm.
Yeah, and it's much more effective than simply repeating words on their own.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, give shadowing a try.
And for anyone who's maybe a little hesitant about speaking out loud at first,
Yeah.
Using language learning apps with speech recognition can be like a good stepping stone
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
because you get that feedback on your pronunciation.
You get that instant feedback, which is so valuable.
Right, and it's in a relatively low pressure environment.
Exactly. You're not face to face with someone.
There's no judgment.
So you can experiment and make mistakes.
Yeah. And there are so many great apps out there,
There are tons.
like Duolingo or Babbel.
Those are good ones.
They give you that space to practice speaking. You get some guidance, without worrying about like a live conversation.
Exactly.
And, I really like this idea of creating little English speaking routines throughout your day.
Oh, yeah, little habits that keep you engaged.
Yeah, like labeling things around your house.
Yeah.
Or even just practicing phrases to yourself while you're doing everyday things.
Like what kind of phrases?
Like describing what you're cooking as you're doing it.
Oh, that's a good one.
Or, like if you're getting dressed,
Yeah.
you could say the names of the clothes in English.
That's a great way to integrate English into your daily life.
It makes it feel more real.
It does.
Okay, and this next point is so important, I think, for learners.
What's that?
Embracing mistakes as learning opportunities.
Ah, yes. Mistakes are our friends.
Because our instinct is often to avoid making mistakes.
Oh, yeah. We want to get everything perfect.
Right, and the thing is, errors are actually incredibly valuable.
They are.
They'll tell you what you need to work on.
Exactly. They highlight those areas where you need more practice or a clearer understanding.
And, the sources point out that it's often like that act of making a mistake and then correcting it
Yeah.
that really helps us remember things in the long run.
It's true. When you make a mistake and then figure out the right way, it sticks in your memory.
Totally. And finally, on the topic of regular practice, joining online conversation groups or forums,
Well, yeah.
connecting with other learners and with native speakers,
Mm-hmm.
because that real-time interaction is just so beneficial.
There's no substitute for real conversation.
And you get exposed to so many different accents and natural expressions.
Right? You hear English spoken in all its diversity.
That you might not find in like more structured learning environments.
Yeah, textbooks can only teach you so much.
Exactly. And there are so many great platforms out there for this.
There are tons.
Like italki and Tandem.
Yeah, those are popular ones.
They really facilitate those connections and give you a chance to actually communicate with people from all over the world.
Yeah, it's a great way to practice and make friends.
Okay, so we've got consistent practice using all these different techniques. That's like the foundation.
Absolutely the foundation.
Now let's move on to another really important element for speaking faster and more confidently.
What's that?
Expanding your vocabulary.
Ah, yes. Vocabulary, the building blocks of language.
Because it's not just about knowing a lot of words, right?
Right. You need to know how to use them.
Exactly. The sources really emphasize the importance of learning words within a context.
Context is key.
Yeah, focusing on the phrases and expressions that native speakers actually use.
Like in real conversations.
Right. So it's about moving beyond just like memorizing single word definitions and really understanding how words function in real sentences.
Like instead of just learning the word happy,
Right.
you're also learning phrases like feeling on top of the world.
Exactly. Because then you have those ready-made chunks of language
Ready to go.
that you can just pull out and use, and that really helps with speaking more smoothly.
It makes your speech sound more natural and fluent.
Okay, and then we get into phrasal verbs.
Ah, yes, phrasal verbs, the bane of many English learners' existence.
Right, these are those verb plus preposition or adverb combinations.
It's like look up or look into
that often have like a completely different meaning
than the individual words.
than the individual words.
It can be tricky.
And they're everywhere in English.
They are. You can't avoid them.
But what's so cool about them is that they can express like really nuanced ideas.
Yeah, often in a very concise way.
In a very concise way. So mastering them is a big step towards sounding more fluent.
It really is. It makes you sound more like a native speaker.
Okay, and then there are idioms.
Ah, yes, idioms. Those expressions where the meaning isn't obvious from the individual word.
Right, like break the ice or hit the nail on the head.
Those are good ones.
They add a lot of color to the language.
They do. They make your speech more interesting and engaging.
And then we have collocations.
Collocations. What are those again?
These are combinations of words that just naturally go together.
Oh, right, like strong coffee.
Yeah. You wouldn't say powerful coffee.
No, that sounds strange.
Even though powerful and strong, like, kind of have similar meanings.
Yeah, it's interesting how certain words just sound right together.
Like, make an effort.
Right, you wouldn't say do an effort.
No, it sounds weird.
So how do we know which words go together?
You know, it's a good question. A lot of times it's just a matter of usage.
Like native speakers have just developed these combinations over time.
Right. There might not be a grammatical rule.
No, it's more about what sounds natural.
And it's important to prioritize when you're building your vocabulary, right?
Yeah, focus on the most useful words.
Focusing on high-frequency vocabulary.
What does that mean?
These are the words that you're actually going to use in, like, everyday situations.
Blah.
So travel, food, work.
Right, those practical topics?
Yeah, you know, like deadline, project, team, handle a situation.
Those are good examples.
Manage a task.
Yeah, those are the words you'll encounter all the time.
And the sources really highlight the importance of active learning.
Active learning, what's that?
So it's about not just passively reading or listening, but really paying attention to the context,
Yeah.
the patterns of new words, and then making an effort to use them in your own speaking.
So you're actively engaging with the language.
Right. And that's key for remembering what you learn.
It makes sense. When you use a word, you're more likely to remember it.
Exactly. And for those who like a more structured approach,
Yeah.
using flashcards can be really helpful.
Yeah, flashcards are a classic study technique.
Especially digital apps that use spaced repetition.
Spaced repetition, what's that?
So it's basically reviewing words at increasing intervals.
Ah, okay. So you're not just cramming everything in at once.
Right. And that helps you maximize how much you remember.
It's a smart way to study.
And a lot of these apps let you include example sentences
Yeah.
and audio for pronunciation, which is really helpful.
So you're seeing the word in context and hearing how it's pronounced.
Exactly. And again, the emphasis on actively using new words in your daily conversations.
Right.
Really trying to weave them into your speech.
Use it or lose it.
Yeah. And maybe even keeping a vocabulary journal.
A vocabulary journal. What's
Or
that?
you write down new words
Oh.
with their meanings and example sentences.
So it's like your own personalized dictionary.
Exactly. And then you can refer back to it.
That's a great idea.
And finally, learning from movies and TV shows.
Oh, yeah. Movies and TV shows are a great way to learn English.
Because you're seeing how words are used in different situations.
Yeah, in real-life contexts.
Yeah, right. And you can look up unfamiliar words
Mm.
and even try to mimic how the actors speak.
So you're absorbing the natural rhythm and intonation.
It's like immersing yourself in the language.
Yeah. And it's entertaining, too.
Okay, so building your vocabulary, it's a multifaceted thing.
Yeah, it's not just about memorizing lists of words.
Right. It's about learning in context, focusing on those natural phrases.
And actively putting what you learn into practice.
Use it or lose it.
Now let's talk about the power of listening to native speakers.
Ah, yes. Listening, it's so important.
Because it's about so much more than just understanding the words.
Right. It's about tuning into the whole soundscape of the language.
Exactly.
The rhythm, the stress, the intonation.
It's like moving beyond that textbook English.
Yeah, that can sound a little stiff and formal.
And getting a feel for how English actually sounds in real life.
It's about catching the music of the language.
And movies and TV shows are great for this too.
Yeah.
Really paying attention to real conversations in different situations, noticing where the emphasis falls in a sentence.
Yeah, the emphasis can really change the meaning.
Like, take that example. I can't believe you did that.
Yeah.
Like, depending on which word you stress, it can sound angry or surprised or disappointed.
It's true. Intonation is so powerful.
And the sources recommend seeking out content that you actually enjoy.
Yeah.
You know, TV shows, podcasts on topics that interest you. Makes it more fun to learn.
Because if you're engaged, you're going to pay more attention.
You're more likely to pick up new vocabulary and phrases.
And this point about intonation and rhythm, really trying to mimic the way native speakers emphasize key words.
Yeah, that's important for clarity.
Like if you say, I can't believe I won the lottery.
Yeah.
Like stressing believe and lottery.
It emphasizes your excitement.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about something that can be tricky.
What's that?
Connected speech.
Connected speech.
It's basically how words kind of blend together when native speakers are talking quickly.
Oh, yeah, like when words run into each other.
Right. So what do you want often becomes what I want.
Right.
Or did you eat can sound like did you eat?
Yeah, it can be hard to understand.
And the reason it trips people up is that sounds can actually change or disappear.
When words are spoken together quickly.
So instead of hearing each distinct sound, it's more like this smooth flow.
Yeah, it's all connected.
So how can we get better at understanding connected speech?
Well, one good way is to listen to short segments of native speech repeatedly.
Okay.
And really focus on how the words link together.
So you're breaking it down.
You're breaking it down and training your ear.
And you could even try transcribing what you hear.
Ah, that's a good exercise.
And then compare it to the actual text.
To see where those connections happen.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the importance of exposing yourself to different accents.
Yes, accents that can be challenging.
American English, British English, Australian English.
They all sound so different.
They do. And each one has its own unique features.
Like pronunciation, vocabulary, even slang.
So the more you expose yourself to different accents,
The better you'll understand them.
the more adaptable you'll become as a listener and a speaker.
Yeah, you won't be thrown off by unfamiliar accent.
Okay, and now we come back to shadowing.
Yes, shadowing again.
It's a great technique.
It is.
So mimicking those short segments of speech,
Mm-hmm.
really focusing on getting the pronunciation, the rhythm, and the stress as close as possible.
It's like you're becoming the speaker.
And the goal is to eventually be able to keep up with their natural speaking speed.
It takes practice, but you can get there.
And there's this tip about adjusting the audio speed for practice.
Yes, starting slow and gradually increasing the speed.
Right. So starting with slower audio and then slowly increasing it to train your brain to process faster speech.
Yeah, it's like working out your listening muscles.
You're building up to that native speed.
And it prevents you from getting overwhelmed.
Okay. And finally, using transcription as a learning tool.
Transcription.
Yeah. Writing down what you hear to really focus on those individual sounds and the pronunciation,
It's a great way to improve your listening skills.
and then checking those transcripts to reinforce what you've learned.
Yeah, it helps you see the connection between spoken and written English.
Okay, so immersing yourself in the sounds of English, actively listening to native speakers with a focus on rhythm and intonation, even connected speech,
It's all part of the process.
and using techniques like shadowing and transcript,
Those are powerful tools.
all vital for improving your speaking speed.
Absolutely.
Okay, now this next point is really interesting. It's about slowing down in order to speed up.
Slow down to speed up. That sounds counterintuitive.
It does, right?
How does that work?
But when you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Okay, I'm listening.
Because when you speak more slowly at first, you're giving your brain more time to process the language
Okay.
and build strong neural pathways for the correct pronunciation and grammar.
So it's like building a solid foundation.
Exactly. If you rush through it, you might make more mistakes.
Makes sense.
And then those mistakes can become habits.
Yeah, it's harder to unlearn bad habits than to learn good ones from the start.
So intentional slow practice, reading aloud or speaking deliberately, really paying attention to each sound.
Slow and steady wins the race.
And maybe even using phonetic transcription.
Phonetic transcription, what's that?
So it's a system of symbols that represent the sounds of English.
Ah, okay. So it's like a more precise way of writing down pronunciation.
Exactly. And you can find phonetic transcriptions in a lot of online dictionaries.
That's handy.
And then once you've got that accuracy down, you can gradually increase your speed.
Yeah, little by little.
Maybe even time yourself and try to find that sweet spot where you're speaking more quickly, but still maintaining clarity and a natural rhythm.
It's a balancing act for sure.
And practicing speaking in natural phrases or chunks of language rather than word by word.
Yeah, that's important.
That really helps with fluency.
It makes your speech sound more natural.
Like saying, I'm going to the store to buy groceries.
Yeah.
Thinking of it and saying it as like these meaningful units.
Rather than like, I'm going to.
Exactly. And then you can try shadowing again.
Shadowing always comes back.
It's such a versatile technique.
It is.
But this time, try it at different speeds.
Right.
Starting with slower recordings and then gradually trying to match the pace of native speakers.
So you're challenging yourself.
Right. And it helps your brain adapt to different speaking rates.
Makes sense.
And then focusing on those key content words in a sentence, articulating them clearly and maybe a little bit more quickly.
So even if some of the other words get a little blurred, the main message still comes across.
Exactly. And practicing having conversations with a language partner.
Ah, yes. Conversation practice is so important.
It is, and you can start at a slower pace and then gradually increase the speed as you both get more comfortable.
So it's a collaborative effort.
And you could even try doing debates or discussions.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Where you have to think and respond quickly.
It will definitely get you thinking on your feet.
And finally, this point about reducing anxiety by starting with slower speech.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When you're not feeling rushed, you can really focus on expressing yourself clearly.
And that builds confidence.
It does.
So it's a win-win.
So it's about building that solid base of clarity and accuracy at a slower pace, and then intentionally, gradually increasing your speed.
Sounds like a solid plan.
Okay, now let's move on to what I think is a truly transformative idea.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The power of thinking in English.
Thinking in English.
Yeah.
I've heard of that, but I'm not sure I understand.
So basically, it's about training yourself to think directly in English.
Okay.
Without translating from your native language.
So you're bypassing that translation step.
Exactly. And that can have a huge impact on your speaking speed and fluency.
Wow. I can see how that would make a difference.
Because that translation process is often like a bottleneck for learners.
Yeah, it slows you down.
And when you can think directly in English, you can respond much more quickly and naturally.
Makes sense.
And the sources suggest some really practical ways to start doing this.
Like what?
Well, just describing the things you see around you in English.
Oh,
even if it's just naming objects.
so you're building those connections in your mind
Exactly.
between the object and the English word.
And even talking to yourself in English.
Talking to myself.
Yeah, like mentally narrating what you're doing throughout the day.
That sounds a little strange.
I know it can feel a little weird at first.
Yeah, but I can see how it would be helpful.
It's like creating a constant stream of English in your mind.
So you're immersing yourself in the language even when you're alone.
Exactly. And you can also set aside specific times during the day for English-only thinking.
Okay.
Maybe during your commute or when you're taking a walk.
Yeah, those are good times.
And use that time to describe things, plan your day, or even replay conversations you've had, but all in English.
So you're making English the default language for your thoughts.
And as you get more comfortable, you can try increasing the complexity of those mental exercises.
Like how?
Thinking about your opinions on things.
Yeah.
Analyzing situations you encounter, even talking to yourself about your emotions, but all in English.
So you're pushing yourself to use the language in more complex ways.
Right. And creating an environment that's rich in English.
What do you mean?
Like changing the language settings on your phone and computer.
Oh, yeah, I've done that.
Putting labels on things around your house.
So you're surrounded by English all the time.
Yeah. Exactly. And then you can even mentally rehearse conversations.
Okay.
Imagine yourself in different scenarios, like a job interview or ordering food at a restaurant,
Yeah.
and think about what you would say.
So you're prepared for those real-life interactions.
Exactly. And the key here is to focus on communication.
Not perfection.
Yeah. Allow yourself to make mistakes and just let those thoughts flow.
Don't get bogged down in grammar rules.
And try to even use English for problem solving,
Okay.
making decisions in your own life.
So really integrating it into your everyday thinking.
Exactly. So actively developing that habit of thinking in English, even in small ways, it can really make a big difference.
Wow. I'm going to have to try that.
Okay, now let's talk about something that might surprise some people.
That's that.
The strategic use of fillers.
Fillers, you mean like,
Yeah.
but aren't we supposed to avoid those?
Well, the thing is,
I've always been told they make you sound less confident.
I know, but they actually serve a purpose in natural conversation. They give you a little time to think
Okay.
without creating those awkward silences.
So you're not just like dead air.
Right, and they can help to create a more relaxed conversational tone.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
But the key word here is strategic.
Strategic.
Because overusing fillers can definitely make you sound hesitant.
Yeah, I've heard people who say, or like every other word.
Right, and it can be really distracting for the listener.
It makes it hard to follow what they're saying.
So the idea is to replace some of those generic fillers with more purposeful phrases.
Okay.
Like, let me think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
Or, that's a good question.
Some more thoughtful.
Exactly. And the sources give some good examples of how to use these more strategic fillers in different situations.
Like what kind of situations?
Well, like if you need a moment to remember a word, or if you're formulating an opinion, or if you want to express uncertainty.
So you're using them intentionally.
Right. And they also suggest some alternatives to just like, things like, I mean, actually, let me see.
Okay, those are good ones.
So varying the fillers you use can make your speech sound more natural.
It keeps it from sounding repetitive.
But there are definitely situations where you should avoid fillers altogether.
Like when?
Like in formal settings,
Yeah.
job interviews, presentations.
Mm-hmm.
When you're very familiar with the topic you're discussing, or when you're giving important instructions.
So when clarity is really important.
Right, so it's about finding that balance.
Yeah, not too many fillers, but not trying to eliminate them completely.
Using them intentionally and sparingly.
When you need that little pause.
And gradually trying to reduce your reliance on them, but still sounding natural.
It's a skill that takes practice.
Okay, so we've talked about using fillers strategically.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Now let's get to what the sources call the ultimate practice ground. Real conversations.
Ah, yes, the real deal.
This is where everything comes together.
It's where the rubber meets the road.
Right, you're exposed to how people actually use the language.
Yeah, with all the nuances and variations.
All the new vocabulary, the slang, the expressions that you just don't find in textbooks.
Real conversations are unpredictable.
They are.
You never know what's going to come up.
And it's simultaneous practice of your listening and speaking skills.
You have to be on your toes.
You have to process what you're hearing and then formulate your response all in real time.
It's a mental workout.
And that's what helps you get faster.
Yeah, you have to think quickly.
And it's in those real interactions that you start to develop a more natural intonation, rhythm, and pronunciation.
You're picking it up subconsciously.
It's by being immersed in the language.
Yeah, it's like osmosis.
The sources highly recommend joining English-speaking groups or language exchange programs.
Those can be great.
They offer structured practice and supportive environments.
Yeah, it's a good way to meet people and practice.
And they mention platforms like Hello Talk Tandem Speaky
Those are popular ones.
and finding a dedicated conversation partner.
Yeah, someone you could practice with regularly.
Websites like Conversation Exchange and italki are specifically mentioned.
Those are good resources.
And then getting involved in your local community.
Yeah.
Looking for meetups, clubs, language cafes, even public speaking events or book clubs.
That's a great way to use English in real life situations.
And of course, utilizing video calls,